One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Monday.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. That's right.
I got to add the plural. We are always Marla and Dave, but what's different is our guest. And today is a happy day.
Wait. Let's take a little. I know you're excited, but I want to remind everybody to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. We can't bring you all this great content without your support. We need you. Help us out.
And let me
Marlon, now go ahead.
My excitement is palpable for a reason. Before I get into all of the bio and the greatness that's written on paper, let me just tell you that this today is like bring your family to work day. Tony Sweet is we actually call him Sweetie. We've been with Tony for a very long time in this world of podcasting, so he is someone that we also call friend. But for those who don't know, he's also no stranger to this show. He's the CEO of United Broadcast Network. Without Tony, there's no us. So it's ubngo.com. You know him from some of his own podcasts and broadcasts, like Truth Be Told, much and many more. Our Sweetie we lovingly refer to him, like I told you before. This BS Dave wrote on a piece of paper. Get out of here. I don't even need it.
It's a placeholder.
I don't even need it. It's just ridiculous. The bottom line is, it is a pleasure for me to know that Tony has agreed to come and share his story of mental health impact on his family and in his life. And you're going to find out when I find out. Don't move. We'll be right back.
When Dave and Marla get together, it's hot.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
Listen up. Learn something.
I found out that I can use Tony as my accomplice because of the things we were saying. I said, "Oh, Dave can hear us." He said, "No, he can't," and I just kept going.
Yeah, I was saying it was awfully quiet.
Yeah. It was. We weren't saying anything. Tony.
What are you guys saying?
Tony.
Yes.
I literally walked in. And the first thing I said to you was, I never knew, and we've talked briefly, but I never really knew how your family was impacted by mental health. I mean, and we've told, I know about your family, but I never connected it to any type of mental health issue, just difference. Talk to me.
First of all, I get an applause too. My God.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome. That's narcissistic.
I was about to say, Marla's just going in. He didn't even say we welcome our friend, our producer.
I just wanted to pull out his narcissism.
Right.
I did it.
Tony Sweet to Mental Health Mondays.
You know what?
Wait a minute, 2 times. I'll do it again. Yay!
There you go.
I'm a double narcissist.
You need something else, like balloon pops or something. I don't know. Yeah, you need some more. You need bigger than the average.
But yeah. What's funny is when I've been running your show for a long time, years.
Years.
And when I hear a lot of these people's stories, I'm like, yep, that's my family. Yep, That's my family.
Wow.
Yep, that happened to me. Yep, that happened to my mom. So, yeah, going through, years of just thinking that is a normal situation, like most people, with alcoholism,
Right.
and drug abuse in my family, and mental health. You kind of, growing up, you're like, oh, that's just everybody. So
let's get a scope of your family.
Sure.
You are one of how many children?
the baby of 4.
Okay. Sisters and brothers?
I had 2 sisters. One just passed away 2 months ago.
Okay, that's right. You're telling me.
So 2 sisters and 1 brother. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. And
Which as the baby, that has its own dynamic in the family setting unto itself.
Yes.
With issues that can come from that as well.
Right.
So
Yes.
take us back to what it was like growing up in the Sweet household.
I grew up in a small town in Kansas.
Kansas.
So,
He always says it like that too.
Kansas.
Kansas.
It's a town about 300 people. Half the town was pretty much my cousins. You know how those small towns are, brother cousin type of thing.
Marla's family's from Malvern, so she knows exactly how that is.
Exactly.
Right. So everybody knows everybody. Everybody's in everybody's business. It's nice to, when people are there to help you.
Right.
But it's not always nice when
Right.
things you want to keep secret.
Right.
You can't. But, growing up, apparently, I don't remember a lot about my childhood. And I think going through many years of going to therapists and psychologists, that a lot of times you kind of have this, traumatic amnesia of things that has happened in your past that you just don't remember. Because I hear people like, oh, when I was 2 years old, I remember when. And I'm like, what? How do you remember that far back?
I can remember back like that until I was 3.
See, I don't. And my dad is, even though he's 88 and doesn't drink anymore, he still is an alcoholic. Alcoholism, you never, you never
really get over it.
Yeah, never get over it.
You have to manage.
Yeah, and so because of, he's 88 and he has Perkinson's, and so that didn't really help him being a drinker. So that's one reason he stopped. But all my uncles were, my grandmother was, my grandpa drank, my siblings drank drugs, cigarettes, and so there was a big addiction in my family on all sides.
So here's a question.
Sure.
When you really examine that, do you feel like that now that you're an adult and you can look at the total scope that those abuses were covering up other issues?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because people say it, and I say that because yes, alcoholism is definitely a disease, but at the same time, I'm now understanding the real significance of dual diagnosis, because a lot of the times the use of any substance is to escape the actual reality of the difference.
My father's side, I didn't really see as in typical mental illness until the last few years, until when we found out some things about people in my family that was like, okay, there's definitely some big time issues. But my mother's side definitely had a lot of mental illness. She never knew her real mother. Her mother left when she was a year old, and so my mother found out, she went to the military in 1957. She joined. Her father was abusive to her. I don't know if it was sexually, but mostly very mental abuse. She was raped by an officer in the military. She married into my dad's alcoholic family. So she never had the ability to find a safe space. And, growing up, her dad said, your mother never wanted you. She left because of you, that type of thing.
Wow. So she was carrying a lot.
She carried a lot. And so when hers finally kicked in, when I noticed and everybody else noticed, my mother was a very tough woman, but the sweet woman, a very sweet woman, no pun intended. But she was a very tough woman because she was, in the MP and the military and all these things. So, but she was a little heavy. It wasn't, for California, yes, but back then, so people called her Fat Pat.
Wow.
And that was my dad's friends used to call her Fat Pat because she was a little chubby, but she was not overly
Right.
fat. Well, when I was 12 years old, she became severely anorexic, severely. And so she went from 180 pounds down to 98 pounds, became suicidal.
Wow.
And so when the doctors could never figure out what was going on. We didn't know it was anorexia, but she just kept losing weight, and she became, kind of not coherent when it comes to reality. So all my siblings were gone by this time because they were quite a bit older than me, 6 to 8 years older than I was. So I was the only one really there in the house. My dad was gone working and drinking most of the time, so I was there most by myself with her. So I became the caretaker, which
Right.
ends up becoming codependency type of thing. But
Right.
So when she got to the point where she was pretty much on her deathbed, they put her finally when Dad found out she was anorexic by finding a whole bag of X-Lax in the back closet. So they put her in a mental institution in the VA hospital in Wichita, Kansas. And from that point on, she had, oh my gosh, she was never diagnosed with like bipolar, but severe depression. And back then, though, they didn't really talk about the bipolars
Right.
and all that stuff.
Right.
Maybe
right.
nowadays they may have,
Yeah.
but they end up doing shock therapy on her because she was so severe and suicidal. And from the time I was 12 to the time I graduated, 6 months out of the year, she was in and out of mental institutions. 6 months, 8 months, 3 months. So a lot of times I was by myself, and I raised myself a lot, and so that's how I think the old soul came into play, where
Right.
I was more responsible than people my age,
Right.
and even to this day I still feel that way.
Right.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is all. That's a lot of information. That's a heavy load actually
Very quick.
to carry as a child. And the thing about it is, and we'll talk about this when we come back, but the thing about it is a lot of people don't understand that in some of these situations, the toll that can take on a child. I mean, the PTSD alone, a part of that alone is enough to actually be a little bit much. Anyway, so Tony, thank you so much. Hold that point. We'll get back to the discussion as soon as we come right back.
Dave?
Some have asked what causes mental illness. As far as we know, there is no single cause for mental illness. Here are a number of factors, though, that can contribute to a risk for mental illness.
Early adverse life experiences such as trauma or a history of abuse, for example, child abuse, sexual assault, witnessing violence, etc. Number 2, experiences related to other ongoing chronic medical conditions such as cancer or diabetes. 3, biological factors such as genes or chemical imbalances in the brain. 4, use of alcohol or recreational drugs. 5, having few friends. And 6, having feelings of loneliness or isolation.
And here are 5 warning signs of mental illness. If you see some of these signs, that might be a warning that mental illness is on board. Long-lasting sadness or irritability, extremely high and low moods, excessive fear, worry, or anxiety, social withdrawal, and or dramatic changes in eating or sleeping habits.
If you or anyone you know is suffering from any of these symptoms, please, we ask you, seek professional mental health help. This message is brought to you by NAMI, San Fernando Valley, and Loving Beyond Reason.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together,
It's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
So
But
Tony,
Tony, go ahead, Mark.
no, you go ahead. You're scratching your goatee.
I
That's
was going to
important.
ask, as we were closing the last segment, we were talking about some of the effects that might have on a child. But we actually view I mean, you're the president, you're the CEO of your own
Right.
broadcasting company. You seem like a go-getter. You've had your own
It's a network,
shows.
Dave.
You have your own festival.
Yes.
I mean, so it seems like you have everything together. Was there a time in there before we met you and Claude
What's
introduced
your
us?
personal impact?
What was your personal impact with all of that? Yeah.
I think because, like I said, I'm the baby. I don't. I hear a lot of people, talk about praying to God and religion stuff. I never really grew up in the church. My family didn't really do that. But for some reason, I don't know why, it was like a divine intervention that from the time I was young, I mean, really young, I knew I did not want to be like this.
Yep. I understand that.
Very young, I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't do drugs. I didn't go in that direction of all my siblings, which they all did, and they still do. And when they were off doing their things, drinking and drugging and all that stuff. As I got into being a teen, I started being creative. My dad would come home and, my mom would be gone, in the hospital. My dad would come home and he'd be like, "What are you doing?" I said, I decided the house needed to be painted. So I'd be out there and I'd be scraping the house and painting the house and building, decks and I just being very creative. I started my own little fireworks stand and mowed lawns and painted house. So I was very creative and business
and motivated
because I knew I wanted to be out of there as soon as I graduated high school. And even in my 20s, nobody told me like, "Oh, you need therapy." Nobody ever told me that. Of course I went through depression. Now, of course I went through sadness because, of the childhood that I grew up. I had circumstances. I had high blood pressure in high school because of what I went through.
Stressed out.
I had ulcers in my early 20s.
Wow.
And so about 23, I thought, I need to go see a therapist. Nobody said anything. I decided to go. Even my first therapy was, I don't want this to sound like poor Tony, but it was one that was, it's funny to me now, but it's not funny for people that are trying to get help.
Yeah. No, for sure.
But I remember going to this therapist, and the therapist after a while told me, says, "You're not progressing enough. If you can't progress more, you shouldn't come back."
What?
And I was like,
I've never heard that. That's the first time I've ever heard that.
And I looked at her like, "Are you serious?" I was just like,
So she determined
a guilt trip from the therapist,
right?
Wow.
Because I guess I don't know, maybe it hurt her record or something. So I just said, "Screw you!" So I decided just to move on to another one, and I found a social worker that did therapy.
Right.
And man, she was tough. She was exactly what I needed. She was one of those. No BS.
Right.
Don't BS me.
Right.
You might BS everybody else, but don't BS me. And she was actually what I needed because I didn't have that growing up.
Right. Well, you know what? Kudos
She
for
gave you a
you,
sense of
though.
accountability.
Kudos
Yes.
for you for continuing on to the next person.
Yeah,
Because with
for
an
sure.
experience like that, somebody's like, "Oh, therapy's BS. I'm out."
Right. No, I don't think I felt that way.
Therapy schmerapy.
But also, even in my 20s, I think what really saved me also because I had a really close connection or relationship with God. Not religion, with God. Mm-hmm. I went to Buddhist temples. I went to 50 different churches.
Right.
You did your own soul searching.
Yeah, and found what I needed and found what worked for me. And I've always been that way. Even to this day, just using my job, everything is more creativity to keep me sane.
Right.
And
does that and that's an honest question I have. Is that a fear for you? of losing yourself based on what you've witnessed in your family. Are you hypercritical of your mental wellness at all times because you know what's possible?
Yeah, because even to this day, like, back in my 20s, if somebody said, "Hey, you want a beer?" then I would not. I'd be like, "Oh, no, thanks." Why?
Right.
No, I'm not a drinker. Okay, great. We move on. Then I'd be like, "Yeah, give me that drink," and I would if it was a beer, I would throw it against the ground or against a wall and say, "Now, don't ask me again." Because I had so much anger,
some hostility,
towards that. So, but I was usually the most calm person that you could ever.
I was gonna say, I've never your whole countenance.
Yeah.
If you guys don't understand his countenance, you must meet him.
His countenance, darling.
Yes, sweetie, sweetie.
So one of the things that kind of leads me to ask, well, it sounds like because of those negative experiences, you use that as something that I almost like. Fear motivation. I don't want to be this.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, that could also lead to making yourself your worst critic. Holding yourself to such a high standard could be a result of what you're explaining and what you're discussing.
I'm not as bad as I used to. Now I'm actually, because my looks, my body, back in the day, 20s, 30s, early 40s, I was like, I gotta be fit and muscular. Now I'm like, I'm 20 pounds over. I'm okay. I want to feel healthy, but it's like I'm not so critical.
You're not gonna die, right?
Right. So I'm a little more kind of down to earth, and I don't fear that anymore.
There's a little bit more balance.
Yeah.
Would you say that? I mean, you're more balanced in your actual expectations for yourself. Like before, your standard was way up here, no exceptions to the rule. Now you're like, even though that was great, you're good with you.
Right. Yes, I'm good with me. And, and I was talking to Marla before that, my brother, who was diagnosed with bipolar, I recently, and I'm okay with saying it, that said, my mother passed away and my dad's health is not great. And I pretty much just said, I've had enough. I was being cordial and I was being friendly because of my mother. And I'm okay with saying goodbye, even though I love my brother. There's just too much that...
You can't carry that burden.
No.
And I totally understand.
And that's why I admire you guys, because it's like, I don't have children, but I've seen what you guys been through, and I'm like, how do you hold on? How do you hold on to that family member? It's your child, which I get it. But it's like, for me... my brother, I'm like, I was holding on because of my mother.
Right.
Now that my mother's gone, it was like, my brother's 60 years old. He's not going to change.
The reason why is no longer there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
and I think there is a distinction between parents to children,
right,
versus sibling to sibling.
Right.
And that's something that we've experienced in our family as well.
But I'll say this. I'll say this, and I'm going to speak to this directly. I realize now that there's something that I say. All I can do is love you. I can't save you. God didn't give me that power.
How long did it take you to do that?
Last week. I just finished. I just learned it. But no, seriously. But it's been late. But the other thing about it is, just like you say, and it's their life to live or lose.
Right.
But I think that we're not. Sometimes I want to show you all the tools. I don't think we understand the impact of the trauma that we experience by being in that role, like with your brother and with David and I. I'm speaking for myself, as Marla, as a mother, trying to change the outcome from someone, even when they have mental health challenges, that just simply doesn't freaking want it.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot reinvent the wheel, and no matter how I try. So I applaud you. And yes, it is a lot different because I'm there pretty much as well with my own sibling.
Right.
Because what can I do? I mean, and I say to my parents, I'm like, look, you're his parents. I'm his sister. I don't have to.
Right.
And I've been through a lot. And so I don't even have the capacity. Sorry, no room in this closet. It's full. So you can't hang out here with me anymore. So I applaud you for that and doing what you need to do for your wellness, which is really the point that I want to highlight. That sometimes letting go is your balance and your salvation for your wellness, because you can't effectively love someone else if you're wrapped up in their sickness.
And letting go does not mean giving up.
Right.
It's just,
Absolutely.
unfortunately, we have, life is very short.
Tony, you're the producer. Get out of here.
Oh, yeah,
Get
by the way. We'll be right back right after this message.
Okay, Tony and I, we're doing it together today. Here we go.
All right, yeah.
We decided we were going to be poppers.
I don't want to do that, Mike.
So, last week our guest was Latina Jackson, and we asked her, and I hope she's watching, what percentage of Americans will meet the criteria for a diagnosable mental health condition at some point in their lifetime?
And it was 27%, 46%, or 62%. And she did answer. We're not going to ask Tony because that's ridiculous. He was sitting right here.
I know, and I'm looking at the answer right now.
I regret to say that you are not the two-time winner that I'm sure you'd hope you'd be. But you're very smart. And this is not going to change anything in your life, girl.
And we still love you.
Everybody loves you.
The answer was 46%.
But it's 46%.
Yeah, Marla, what's the question for next week?
And we always encourage you to go onto our social media and use your voice to answer these poll questions. What is the number of U.S. adults with schizophrenia? 500,000, 1 million, or 1.5 million? You remember Austin Powers? Million!
Absolutely. And everybody starts laughing.
Oh, what does that smell?
I want to remind you guys to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our Dollar Today
this wasn't a good idea.
Away campaign. We're going to get back to our discussion with Mr. Tony Sweet.
Sorry.
All right, so now, Tony, one of the things that we appreciate with all of our guests, and even with you, a lot of times when you work with somebody, you forget to ask, like Marlon was saying at the beginning of the show, not just how are you doing, but what have you been through? What has shaped your life up to this point, and sort of some of the things that you've had to deal with, especially when it deals with mental health. One would think that we would ask that all the time, but we're so glad to have this discussion with you. Tell us about some of the things that you're doing now, because I know you recently just worked on your festival. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I've started my podcast company almost 13 years ago this year. So I've been working with people like you for many years.
Play the thing. Woo! Do the clapping.
Oh,
clap for yourself. Now's the time.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
I was like,
we need a little button that we can actually.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, no. If I get a button for Tony, it'll be shock.
Oh, no, right, please. And then just recently, about a month ago, I had my first annual Parapod Festival.
Oh, nice.
Which is a paranormal festival of all kinds of paranormal. So, yeah, it was something that I've been wanting to do. And that's something that a lot of people say that, oh, you talk about things, but a lot of times when you talk about it, you actually do it. So that's something that I take pride in, that if I say something that I do.
And we're glad that you do the things, because without you following through and doing what Tony Sweet does, then we wouldn't be here. So you have no idea how much of a natural match. I don't loosely use the word God. And being in the right place at the right time. And like Dave said, we were introduced to Tony Sweet through one of Dave's group members, Claude McKnight, who was going to be doing a podcast.
Had a podcast.
He did do a podcast. And Claude's pod and casting is gone down the road. And David and I are here with Tony Sweet since 2014.
Has it been around? Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's when we started.
Our first show was the Relationship CPR.
Oh,
we started with you in 2014.
Wow. Almost next year, 10 years.
Tony, let me tell you something.
21.
That is insane. And you were all tight back in the day. Just everything was all
now my boobs hit my knees.
Now I'm like, you want to strap those things up before you hit the board?
Right? You think I'm typing with my hands, don't you?
Thank you, Tony. We love you so much. We couldn't do what we do without you. So we appreciate you. And we appreciate everybody else for taking some time. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your holiday. weekend, this extended weekend. Have some fun, get outside, get some sun.
And Tony, thank you for
Enjoy
trusting
yourself.
us with the deeper part of your truth, because
Of
we
course.
love you full on. There's nothing you could say other than that Dave. No, I'm just kidding.
Keep
There's
going.
nothing. No. Tiff, let it out.
Yeah,
Let
I'm
it out.
sure as soon as I'm off the screen, I'll just go out.
Oh,
I had
it's
to
on,
stop.
Dave.
I had to stop my actual my stand-up comedian mind from going crazy. Anyway, we really do love you, and we thank you so
Love you
much.
back.
And every conversation that we have right here on Mental Health Monday is one worth having and hearing. And Tony Sweets is no different. So we're so grateful that you did that, because I'm inspired.
Aw.
Because I really do feel like I can do bigger things.
You can do bigger things. I believe in you.
Bigger,
It only takes one person to believe in you.
bigger. Here
All
I
right.
go. All right.
She can lead
I've
the
been
cheer
pumped
team.
up by
See you
Tony
guys
Sweet.
next week.
Bye, Dave.
All right. See ya.
See ya.